The stars stretched endlessly across the vast expanse of space, their light flickering faintly against the cold emptiness. The Galactic Empire's territory was a sprawling dominion, its borders marked by countless star systems and defended by fleets of powerful warships. It was supposed to be a time of peace, or at least stability, but something unusual had appeared on the edge of Imperial space, something that shouldn't exist. Captain Alan Carter sat in the command chair of the Eclipse, one of the Empire's most advanced vessels. He was a man in his late 40s, with sharp features and graying hair, known for his calm demeanor under pressure. Around him, the bridge buzzed with activity as officers worked tirelessly at their stations. The hum of machinery blended with the occasional beep of sensors, creating a symphony of order and control. But today, that harmony felt fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. Captain called Lieutenant Karen Miles from her station near the front of the bridge. Her voice carried a note of urgency that caught everyone's attention. "We've picked up an unidentified object on long-range scanners. It's moving slowly but steadily toward our sector." Alan leaned forward slightly, resting his chin on his hand. "Unidentified. Any idea what it is?" Karen hesitated before answering. She was young, in her early 30s, with short brown hair and a focused expression that rarely wavered. Today, however, there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "That's just it, sir. I've never seen anything like it. It doesn't match any known ship designs in our database. Its energy signature is ... strange, almost impossible." Alan frowned. Strange readings weren't uncommon in deep space. There were always anomalies, natural phenomena, debris fields, uncharted asteroids, but this sounded different. "Put it on the main screen," he ordered. A holographic display flickered to life above the central console, showing a grainy image of the object. At first glance, it looked like a ship, but its design defied logic. The vessel was sleek and angular, with jagged edges that seemed to twist unnaturally. Parts of it glowed faintly, with an otherworldly blue light, pulsing rhythmically as if alive. It didn't look like it belonged to any known civilization or even follow the laws of physics. "This thing shouldn't exist," muttered Karen, voicing what everyone else was thinking. Alan stood up and walked closer to the display, studying it intently. "Has it responded to our hails?" "No, sir," replied Ensign Daniel Brooks, a nervous-looking young man stationed at communications. His hands hovered over the controls as if afraid to touch them. "We've sent multiple signals across, all frequencies, but there's been no response. Whatever it is, it's ignoring us." Alan crossed his arms and let out a slow breath. Ignoring standard protocols wasn't just unusual, it was dangerous. Ships that entered Imperial territory without identifying themselves were often treated as potential threats. Still, something about this object gave him pause. It wasn't behaving aggressively, and its course didn't seem aimed directly at any planets or colonies. For now, it was simply drifting along, silent and enigmatic. "Send a report to Fleet Headquarters," Alan instructed. "Include everything we know so far, and keep monitoring it closely. If it changes course, or does anything suspicious, I want to know immediately." "Yes, sir," said Karen, already typing commands into her console. As the crew continued working, Alan couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. The Empire prided itself on its technological superiority, but this object made their finest achievements look primitive by comparison. What worried him most wasn't the ship itself. It was the implications. Who or what had built it, and why was it here? Hours passed, and the mysterious ship remained on its steady path. The tension on the bridge grew thicker with each passing minute. Officers exchanged uneasy glances, their usual confidence replaced by quiet apprehension. Even Alan found himself pacing back and forth, unable to sit still. Then, without warning, the ship did something unexpected. Its glowing sections flared brighter, bathing the surrounding area in an eerie blue light. Sensors on the Eclipse went haywire, emitting loud screeches as data streams became garbled. Alarms blared across the bridge, startling everyone. "What's happening?" Alan demanded, rushing back to his chair. "It's emitting some kind of energy pulse," Karen shouted over the noise. Her fingers flew across her console as she tried to make sense of the readings. "It's interfering with our systems." "Shields up," Alan barked, gripping the armrests of his chair tightly. "Divert power. 2 defensive systems. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, if necessary." The crew scrambled to comply, their movements quick and efficient despite the chaos. The Eclipse's shields shimmered into existence around the ship, providing a thin layer of protection against whatever might come next. But nothing came. After several tense moments, the energy pulse faded, leaving the mysterious ship once again dormant. Silence fell over the bridge as the alarms died down. Everyone stared at the holographic display, waiting for another sign of movement. When none came, Alan turned to Karen. "Damage report." "No major damage, sir," she replied, relief evident in her voice. "But our sensors are still recovering." "We lost a lot of data during the pulse." Alan nodded grimly. "Keep trying to analyze it. See if you can find any patterns or clues about its origin." "Yes, sir." He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as he thought through the situation. This wasn't just an anomaly, it was a puzzle. Every piece of information they gathered raised more questions than answers. Was it a weapon, a probe, or something entirely alien? One thing was certain, the Empire couldn't afford to ignore it. Word of the encounter reached Admiral Laura Hayes at Fleet Headquarters within minutes. A stern woman in her 50s with piercing gray eyes, she wasted no time, assembling a council of senior officers to discuss the matter. Holograms of generals and admirals filled the room, their faces grave as they listened to updates from the Eclipse. "We need to act decisively," Admiral Hayes declared, her voice cutting through the murmurs of concern. "If this ship poses a threat, we must neutralize it before it reaches our core systems. But we also can't risk provoking it without knowing more." "What do you suggest, ma'am?" asked one of the generals. "For now, we'll send reinforcements to support Captain Carter," she replied. "But I'm authorizing limited reconnaissance only. No hostile actions until we have a clearer picture of what we're dealing with." Her decision was met with nods of agreement, though some officers exchanged skeptical looks. The Empire hadn't faced a challenge like this in decades, and uncertainty bred fear. As the meeting adjourned, Admiral Hayes lingered behind, staring at a live feed of the mysterious ship. She knew better than anyone how fragile the Empire's dominance truly was, and how quickly it could crumble if they underestimated their opponent. Back aboard the Eclipse, Captain Carter shared the Admiral's concerns. He trusted his crew to handle whatever came their way, but this situation felt different, dangerous, the kind of danger that could change everything. "Sir," Karen said suddenly, breaking the silence, "I think I've found something." Alan turned to her, his brow furrowing. "What is it?" She pointed to her console, where a series of fragmented symbols had appeared. They pulsed faintly, almost hypnotically. "These patterns there, repeating. I don't recognize the language, but ... but what?" Alan pressed. "I think it's trying to communicate." The bridge of the Eclipse was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Karen Miles leaned over her console, her eyes scanning the fragmented symbols that had appeared on her screen. They pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat, their rhythm steady but unsettling. She wasn't sure what they meant, but one thing was clear, they weren't random. There was intent behind them. "Sir," she said, glancing up at Captain Alan Carter, "I think this might be some kind of message. It's too structured to be natural." Alan stepped closer, his boots clicking softly against the metal floor. He stared at the symbols, his expression unreadable. Can you translate it? Karen shook her head. Not yet. The patterns are unlike anything in our database. But if it's trying to communicate, we need to respond. Before Alan could reply, Ensign Daniel Brooks spoke up from his station. Captain, we're picking up movement. The ship is changing course. Everyone turned toward the holographic display at the center of the bridge. Sure enough, the mysterious vessel had shifted slightly, its jagged form now angled more directly toward the eclipse. The glowing sections along its surface brightened, again, casting an eerie blue light across the void of space. Is it targeting us? Alan asked sharply. No, sir, Karen replied after a moment. It doesn't appear hostile. Its trajectory isn't aggressive just ... deliberate. Alan frowned. Deliberate didn't necessarily mean safe. Keep monitoring it, and see if you can isolate those symbols. If it's trying to talk, we need to figure out what it's saying. Karen nodded and returned to her work, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she attempted to decode the message. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew remained on high alert, their eyes darting between their consoles and the looming image of the alien ship. Minutes passed, each one feeling longer than the last. Then, without warning, the symbols vanished, replaced by a single line of text that appeared on every screen in the bridge. It was written in broken English, as though whoever or whatever had sent it was struggling to communicate. Leave this system or face consequences. The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. No one spoke for a moment, the silence broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. Finally, Alan broke the stillness. Consequences, he muttered under his breath. Turning to Karen, he asked, Did it send that to us specifically? Yes, sir, she confirmed. It's broadcasting directly to the eclipse. Not encrypted, not hidden, just plain and simple. Alan crossed his arms, his mind racing. This wasn't just a warning, it was a demand. Whoever controlled the ship wanted them gone, and they weren't shy about making their intentions known. But why? What did they have to gain by driving the Empire away? Do we know where it came from? He asked. Karen shook her head. No, sir. Long-range scans show nothing beyond standard cosmic background radiation. It's like it appeared out of nowhere. Alan let out a slow breath. This situation was getting more complicated by the minute. First, the ship defied all logic with its design and energy signature. Now it was issuing threats in broken English. Something about it felt wrong. Not just dangerous, but unnatural. We need backup, he decided aloud. Lieutenant Miles, prepare a full report for Fleet Headquarters. Include everything, the symbols, the message, everything. Ensign Brooks, keep trying to establish communication. Maybe we can reason with it. Both officers nodded and got to work, their movements quick and efficient. As they did, Alan turned his attention back to the holographic display. The ship hadn't moved since sending its message, but its presence loomed larger than ever. It was watching them, waiting. Meanwhile, at Fleet Headquarters, Admiral Laura Hayes reviewed the latest updates from the eclipse. Her office was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the glowing screens scattered around the room. She sat at her desk, her sharp gray eyes scanning the data with unwavering focus. When she finished reading, she leaned back in her chair, her expression grim. Commander Brian Keller entered the room moments later, a tall man with broad shoulders and close-cropped hair. He was one of the Empire's most decorated pilots. His squadron, the 47th Recon Wing, had been dispatched to assist the eclipse, and he wasted no time reporting in. Admiral, he said, saluting crisply, my team is ready to deploy. What are your orders? Laura gestured for him to sit. Captain Carter's ship has encountered something, unusual. A vessel of unknown origin, emitting strange energy signatures and issuing threats. We need to assess the situation before taking any drastic measures. Brian raised an eyebrow. Threats. What kind of threats? She handed him a datapad containing the message sent by the mysterious ship. Brian read it silently, his brow furrowing, as he processed the words. Leave this system or face consequences. That's bold. Indeed, Laura agreed, which is why I'm authorizing limited engagement. Your squadron will approach the ship and attempt to gather more information. Use non-lethal force if necessary, but avoid escalating the situation unless absolutely required. Brian nodded, though skepticism lingered in his gaze. Understood, ma'am. But if this thing is as advanced as it seems, how do we even stand a chance? That's why you'll proceed with caution, Laura replied firmly. We don't know what we're dealing with, Commander. Until we do, restraint is our best option. Yes, ma'am. Brian stood and saluted again before leaving the room. As he walked down the corridor, his mind raced with possibilities. The Empire prided itself on its military might, but this mission felt different, dangerous. For the first time in years, he felt uncertain, and that uncertainty gnawed at him. Hours later, Commander Keller led his squadron into the contested sector. 6 sleek fighters formed a tight formation as they approached the mysterious ship, their engines humming softly in the vacuum of space. Through their cockpit windows, the vessel loomed larger than life, its jagged edges and glowing sections, casting an otherworldly glow. This is Squadron Leader Keller, Brian said into his comm unit. We've reached visual range. Initiating scan protocols. His pilots acknowledged the order, their voices calm despite the tension crackling through the channel. Sensors swept over the ship, gathering data at an accelerated rate. Back on the Eclipse, Karen analyzed the incoming information, searching for anything useful. It's resisting our scans, she reported to Alan. Its hull is emitting some kind of interference field. We're getting partial readings, but nothing concrete. Alan clenched his jaw. What about weapons systems? Any sign of armaments? Negative, sir. At least, none that we can detect. But that doesn't mean it's unarmed. Brian's voice crackled over the comlink. Captain Carter, this is Keller. Request permission to move closer. Alan hesitated. Every instinct told him to hold back, to wait for reinforcements or clearer intel. But time was running out. If the ship posed a threat, they needed to confirm it sooner rather than later. Permission granted, he said finally, but stay alert. If anything changes, pull back immediately. Copy that, Brian replied. The fighters drifted closer, their movements cautious but deliberate. As they neared the ship, its glowing sections flared brighter, bathing the surrounding area in an intense blue light. Alarms blared inside the cockpits as the pilot's systems began to malfunction. What's happening? One of the pilots shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Our weapons are offline, another added. Shields too. Brian gripped his controls tightly, his knuckles whitening. All units, retreat. Repeat, retreat, retreat. But it was too late. The mysterious ship unleashed another energy pulse, this one far stronger than the last. The fighters were caught in its wake, their systems completely disabled. One by one, they drifted helplessly in space, powerless to resist. On the Eclipse, alarms rang out as the energy pulse reached them. Alan braced himself as the ship shuddered violently, its systems struggling to compensate. When the pulse subsided, the bridge fell silent, the weight of what had just happened settling over everyone like a suffocating blanket. They're down, Karen whispered, her voice trembling. All 6 fighters, they're dead in the water. Alan stared at the holographic display, his jaw tightening. The mysterious ship hadn't fired a single shot, yet it had neutralized an entire squadron without breaking a sweat. Whatever it was, it wasn't just advanced, it was unstoppable. He turned to Karen. Send a distress signal to fleet headquarters. Tell them we need immediate assistance. And keep trying to decode those symbols. If there's any chance of reasoning with this thing, we need to take it. Karen nodded, her hands shaking as she typed commands into her console. Outside, the mysterious ship floated silently, its glowing sections dimming slightly, as if satisfied with its demonstration of power. It hadn't attacked, but its message was clear: leave, or suffer the consequences. And no one aboard the Eclipse doubted that it meant every word. The bridge of the Eclipse was quieter than usual, but the silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy. The crew worked with a sense of urgency, their movements sharp and deliberate as they tried to process what had just happened. 6 fighters, disabled in an instant. Their pilots were alive, at least for now, but stranded in space, unable to move or communicate. The mysterious ship loomed on the holographic display, its jagged silhouette glowing faintly against the blackness of space. Captain? Alan Carter stood near the center console, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His face was calm, but there was a storm brewing behind his eyes. He glanced at Lieutenant Karen Miles, who was furiously typing commands into her station. "Anything new?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Karen shook her head without looking up. "Still working on it, sir. Whatever that pulse was, it's interfering with our systems more than before. I'm trying to isolate the signal, but it's complicated." Alan nodded, though he didn't fully understand the technical details. He trusted Karen's expertise, but time was running out. Fleet headquarters had acknowledged their distress call, but reinforcements wouldn't arrive for hours or maybe even days. Until then, the Eclipse was on its own. Ensign Daniel Brooks approached hesitantly, clutching a datapad. "Sir," he began, his voice shaky, "I think I found something in the archives. It's not much, but ... Alan turned to him, his expression softening slightly. "Go ahead, Ensign." Daniel swallowed hard and held up the datapad. "I ran a search for ships with similar energy signatures. Nothing came up, but I did find references to old experiments, classified projects from decades ago. One of them was called Project Erebus." "Project Erebus," Alan repeated, raising an eyebrow. "What was it?" "It's hard to say, sir. Most of the files are redacted, but from what I could piece together, it involved experimental warp drives and attempts to create self-sustaining colonies outside normal space-time. The project was shut down after something went wrong." Alan frowned. "Something went wrong? That's vague." Daniel nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. There are mentions of unforeseen consequences and loss of containment. After that, all records stop. It's like the whole thing was erased." Karen looked up from her console, her eyes wide. "Whiter's saying this ship might be connected to one of those experiments. That it's not alien at all." "It's possible," Daniel admitted. "If Project Erebus succeeded in creating a colony or vessel capable of existing outside conventional physics, it could explain why this thing doesn't match any known designs, and why its energy signature is so strange." Alan rubbed his temples, letting the information sink in. If Daniel was right, this wasn't just an alien threat, it was a relic of humanity's past, long forgotten or deliberately buried. Either way, it made the situation even more dangerous. Forgotten technology often came with unforeseen risks, especially when it involved bending the laws of reality. "Keep digging," Alan instructed. "Find out everything you can about Project Erebus, and see if there's any mention of how to neutralize whatever they created." "Yes, sir," Daniel replied, hurrying back to his station. As the ensign worked, Alan turned his attention to the holographic display. The mysterious ship hadn't moved since disabling the fighters. It simply floated there, silent and patient, as if waiting for something. Was it testing them, observing them, or was it biding its time before making its next move? Karen interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, I've managed to stabilize some of the data from the energy pulse. It's still fragmented, but I think I've isolated part of the message it sent earlier." Alan stepped closer. "Let's hear it." She tapped a few keys, and a distorted voice crackled through the speakers. It was mechanical, almost robotic. Speaking in broken English, "You are not welcome here. Leave, or face destruction." The message ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence once again. Alan exchanged a glance with Karen. "It's clear enough," he muttered. "But destruction implies hostility. Why hasn't it attacked yet?" "Maybe it's giving us a chance to leave," Karen suggested. "Or maybe it's waiting for reinforcements too." Alan considered that possibility. If the ship was indeed a product of human experimentation, it might have safeguards programmed into its limits on when or how it could act. Alternatively, it could be damaged, unable to function at full capacity. Neither scenario was comforting. Before he could respond, Admiral Laura Hayes appeared on the main view screen. Her stern expression filled the room, her piercing gray eyes locking onto Alan immediately. "Captain Carter," she said, her voice firm. "Report." Alan straightened instinctively. "Admiral, we've encountered further complications. The ship has issued another warning, this time directly threatening destruction if we don't withdraw. Additionally, our preliminary analysis suggests it may be linked to a classified project known as Project Erebus." Laura's brow furrowed. "Project Erebus? That was supposed to be a failure. Are you certain?" "Not yet, ma'am," Alan admitted. "But the evidence points in that direction. If this ship is a remnant of that project, it could explain its advanced capabilities and its behavior." Laura leaned back in her chair, her gaze distant as she processed the information. After a moment, she spoke. "This changes things. If we're dealing with a human-made threat rather than an alien one, our response must be carefully calibrated. Destroying it outright could have unintended consequences." "I agree, ma'am," Alan replied. "But until we know more, we're operating blind. This ship has already proven it can disable our weapons and defenses with ease. If it decides to attack, we won't stand a chance." Laura nodded grimly. "Understood. I'm authorizing limited reconnaissance missions within Imperial territory to locate any remaining records related to Project Erebus. In the meantime, maintain your position but avoid provoking the ship further. Reinforcements are en route, but they won't arrive for at least 24 hours. "Yes, ma'am," Alan said, saluting. The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in silence once again. Back at Fleet Headquarters, Admiral Hayes wasted no time putting her plan into action. She summoned intelligence analyst Rachel Dawson, a sharp-eyed woman in her mid-30s with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths. Rachel entered the office briskly, her tablet in hand. "You wanted to see me, Admiral?" she asked, standing at attention. Double quotes. "Yes, Dawson," Laura replied, gesturing for her to sit. "We need answers about Project Erebus. Captain Carter believes the mysterious ship may be connected to it, and I want confirmation. Start by reviewing classified archives. Look for anything related to experimental warp drives, extratemporal colonies, or anomalous energy signatures." Rachel nodded, her mind already racing. "Understood, ma'am. Do you have a timeline?" "As soon as possible," Laura said firmly. "Time is critical here. Every hour we delay puts the Empire at greater risk." Rachel left the office and headed straight for the secure archives. Accessing top-secret files required multiple layers of clearance, but she was determined to get results. As she sifted through dusty records and encrypted documents, fragments of information began to emerge. One file caught her attention, a heavily redacted report detailing the final days of Project Erebus. According to the document, the project's lead researcher, Dr. Marcus Lane, had warned his superiors about the dangers of continuing the experiment. He claimed the technology they were developing was unstable and could potentially tear apart the fabric of reality. Despite his warnings, funding for the project continued until a catastrophic event forced its closure. Rachel's heart raced as she read the report. If this ship truly was a product of Project Erebus, it wasn't just a weapon, it was a potential disaster waiting to happen. She flagged the document for immediate review and continued searching, hoping to find more clues about how to stop it. Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse, tensions remained high. Karen had made progress decoding the symbols emitted by the mysterious ship, but the messages were cryptic and difficult to interpret. Some seemed to describe coordinates, while others referenced concepts like containment and thresholds. None of it made complete sense, but Karen refused to give up. "We're missing something," she muttered to herself, staring at her console. "There has to be a pattern here." Alan approached quietly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're doing great work, Lieutenant. Keep at it." Karen glanced up at him, gratitude flickering in her eyes. "Thank you, sir. I'll figure this out, I promise." As the hours ticked by, the crew of the Eclipse prepared for the worst while clinging to hope for the best. They knew reinforcements were coming, but they also knew the mysterious ship wouldn't wait forever. Its glowing sections pulsed rhythmically, a constant reminder of the power it wielded and the danger it posed. And somewhere deep within the bowels of Imperial bureaucracy, Rachel Dawson pieced together fragments of a forgotten nightmare, unaware that her discoveries would soon change everything, for better or worse. The tension aboard the Eclipse was palpable, a quiet unease that hung over every corner of the ship. Captain Alan Carter paced slowly across the bridge, his boots clicking softly against the metal floor. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more troubling than the last. The mysterious ship loomed on the holographic display, its jagged edges and glowing sections casting an eerie light that seemed to mock their helplessness. Karen Miles sat at her station, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she worked tirelessly to decode the symbols emitted by the ship. Her eyes were bloodshot from hours of staring at the screen, but she refused to stop. "There's something here," she muttered under her breath. "It's like a puzzle, but I can't quite put the pieces together." Alan stopped pacing and walked over to her console. "What do you mean?" Karen pointed to a series of fragmented patterns on her screen. "These symbols, they're not random. They repeat in cycles, almost like coordinates or instructions. But some parts are missing, corrupted. It's like trying to read a book with half the pages torn out." Alan frowned. Could it be a map? Or maybe a way to communicate with it? "Possibly," Karen replied. "But until we understand the language better, we're just guessing." Before Alan could respond, Ensign Daniel Brooks approached, holding a datapad. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly. "Sir, I've found more about Project Erebus. It's worse than we thought." Alan turned to him, his expression darkening. "Worse? How?" Daniel swallowed hard before continuing. "According to the files, Project Erebus wasn't just about creating colonies outside space-time. It was also designed as a fail-safe, self-destruct mechanism meant to destroy Earth if the project ever posed a threat to galactic stability." Alan's jaw tightened. "A fail-safe? You're saying this ship might have been built to wipe out humanity?" "That's what the documents imply," Daniel confirmed. "If true, it would explain why it's so powerful and why it's acting aggressively now. Maybe it thinks we're a threat." Alan let out a slow breath, his mind racing. If the ship truly saw humanity as a danger, then leaving wouldn't solve anything. It might follow them, or worse, carry out its original mission. They needed answers fast. "We need to get closer," Alan decided aloud. "If this thing is communicating through those symbols, maybe we can figure out how to talk back." Karen looked up sharply. "Sir, are you sure that's wise? We don't know what it'll do if we provoke it." "I'm not suggesting we attack," Alan replied firmly, "but sitting here waiting for reinforcements isn't getting us anywhere. We'll take a small team, just me, you, and Ensign Brooks, and approach it cautiously. If things go south, the Eclipse can pull us out." Karen hesitated but nodded reluctantly. "Understood, sir." Preparations for the away mission were swift but thorough. The shuttle bay buzzed with activity as technicians double-checked the equipment, while Alan, Karen, and Daniel suited up in protective gear. The shuttle itself was compact but sturdy, designed for short-range exploration in hostile environments. As they boarded, Alan gave final instructions to the crew left behind. "Lieutenant Harris," he said, addressing the officer in charge of the bridge. "If anything happens to us, you're to report directly to Admiral Hayes. Do not engage the ship under any circumstances." "Yes, sir," Lieutenant Harris replied, saluting crisply. "Good luck." With that, the shuttle launched, its engines roaring as it sped toward the mysterious vessel. From inside, the ship looked even larger and more intimidating, its jagged edges twisting unnaturally against the backdrop of stars. As they drew closer, the glow of its surface became almost blinding, forcing them to adjust the tint on their visors. "This is insane," Daniel muttered, gripping the edge of his seat tightly. "We're walking straight into a death trap. We don't have a choice," Alan said calmly. "If this thing is tied to Project Erebus, we need to understand it before it's too late." Karen didn't say anything, her focus entirely on the sensors. "I'm detecting fluctuations in its energy field," she reported. "It's reacting to our presence." "Reacting how?" Alan asked. "Not sure yet," Karen admitted, "but it's not attacking. Not yet, anyway." The shuttle came to a stop near what appeared to be an opening in the ship's hull, a jagged gap that seemed to pulse faintly with blue light. Alan studied it carefully. "That looks like an entry point. Let's move in." They docked the shuttle carefully, securing it magnetically to the ship's exterior. Stepping out onto the alien surface felt surreal. The metal beneath their boots was cold and smooth, unlike anything they'd encountered before. The air shimmered around them, distorted by the ship's energy field. "This place feels wrong," Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible over the comms. "It's not natural," Karen agreed. "Whatever this is, it defies physics. Stay alert." Leading the way, Alan approached the opening cautiously. Inside, the corridor stretched endlessly, its walls lined with strange markings that glowed faintly. The air was thick and heavy, making it difficult to breathe despite their suit's oxygen supply. "This must be the interior," Alan said, his voice steady despite the unease creeping into his chest. "Let's see if we can find anything useful." As they moved deeper into the ship, the environment grew stranger. The walls seemed to shift and twist, as if alive, and the markings pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. At one point, Karen stopped abruptly, pointing to a panel embedded in the wall. "Look at this," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "These symbols, they match the ones we've been decoding." Alan stepped closer, examining the panel. "Can you make sense of them?" "I think so," Karen replied, pulling out a handheld scanner. She began inputting commands, her fingers moving quickly. After a moment, the panel lit up, projecting a holographic display into the air. "What is that?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. "It's a recording," Karen realized. "Some kind of message." The hologram flickered to life, showing a group of people dressed in lab coats. One man stood at the center, his face gaunt and weary. He spoke in a calm but urgent tone, addressing whoever might find the message. "To whoever discovers this," the man began, "you must listen carefully. My name is Dr. Marcus Lane, lead researcher of Project Erebus. What you see around you is the result of our hubris, a creation born of arrogance and fear. We sought to transcend the limits of human existence, to create a colony capable of surviving beyond space-time. But in doing so, we unleashed forces we could not control." The recording paused, and the hologram shifted, showing images of twisted structures and malfunctioning machines. "The colony collapsed under its own weight," Dr. Lane continued. "Its inhabitants were consumed by the very technology meant to protect them. This ship, the Sentinel, was designed as a safeguard, a failsafe to prevent such disasters from spreading. But now, it has become a danger in itself. Alan exchanged a glance with Karen. The Sentinel, he repeated, quietly. So that's what it calls itself. Dr. Lane's expression grew grim. If you are seeing this, then the Sentinel has deemed your presence a threat. It will not hesitate to act. You must find a way to shut it down before it carries out its mission. Destroy it if necessary, but know that doing so may have catastrophic consequences. The recording ended abruptly, leaving the trio in stunned silence. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of Dr. Lane's words settled over them like a suffocating blanket. So that's it, Daniel finally said, his voice hollow. This thing thinks we're a threat, and it's going to destroy us, unless we stop it. Alan clenched his fists, his mind racing. We need to keep moving. If there's a way to shut it down, it's somewhere deeper inside. Karen nodded, though her face was pale. Let's hope we find it before it's too late. As they pressed onward, the ship seemed to grow darker and colder, its corridors narrowing and twisting unpredictably. Every step felt heavier, as if the Sentinel was testing their resolve. Somewhere in the distance, a low hum began to resonate, growing louder with each passing moment, and then, without warning, the lights dimmed, plunging them into near darkness. Alarms blared faintly, echoing through the halls. It knows where. Here, Karen whispered, her voice shaking. Alan gripped his weapon tightly, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Stay close. Whatever happens, we stick together. Deep within the heart of the Sentinel, ancient mechanisms stirred to life, awakened by the intruder's presence. The ship hadn't attacked yet, but it was only a matter of time. The darkness inside the Sentinel was suffocating, pressing down on Alan, Karen, and Daniel like a physical weight. The faint hum that had started moments ago grew louder, vibrating through their suits and echoing in their ears. It wasn't just noise, it was alive, pulsing with an energy that felt almost sentient. The ship knew they were there, and it was watching. Alan led the way cautiously, his weapon drawn but not raised. He didn't want to provoke anything, not yet. Every step forward felt wrong, as if the floor beneath them might give way at any moment. The walls seemed to shift subtly, their jagged edges twisting unnaturally, making it hard to tell where one corridor ended and another began. Karen kept her handheld scanner up, its small screen casting a dim blue glow in the oppressive blackness. The energy readings are spiking, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Whatever's powering this place, it's waking up. Waking up, Daniel repeated, his tone laced with panic. You mean it was sleeping before? I don't know what I mean, Karen admitted, her eyes darting between the scanner and their surroundings, but it feels aware now. Alan glanced over his shoulder at them. Stay focused. We need to find the core, or whatever controls this thing. If Dr. Lane's recording is right, shutting it down might be our only chance. They moved deeper into the labyrinthine corridors, the air growing colder with each step. Strange symbols, etched into the walls, glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the hum that surrounded them. Some of the markings resembled the ones Karen had been decoding back on the Eclipse, but others were completely alien, twisted shapes that made no sense even to her trained eye. This place is insane, Daniel muttered under his breath. It's like walking through someone's nightmare. Alan didn't respond. He couldn't deny the truth in Daniel's words. Everything about the Sentinel defied logic, from its impossible design to the eerie atmosphere that clung to every corner. But they didn't have time to dwell on how unnatural it was. They needed answers, and fast. After what felt like hours, they reached a large chamber. The room was vast, its ceiling disappearing into shadow above them. In the center stood a towering structure, a massive column of glowing blue energy, encased in translucent metal. It pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, sending waves of light rippling outward across the chamber. This has to be it, Karen said, her voice barely audible over the hum. The core. Alan nodded, stepping closer to examine it. Can you shut it down? Karen hesitated, studying the console-like interface embedded in the base of the structure. I'm not sure. This technology is beyond anything I've ever seen. But if we can disrupt the energy flow somehow, ... Before she could finish, the lights in the chamber flared brightly, momentarily blinding them. When their vision cleared, they saw figures emerging from the shadows, humanoid shapes, but distorted and mechanical. Their limbs were elongated, their faces featureless except for glowing red eyes. They moved with jerky, unnatural motions, advancing toward the trio without hesitation. What are those things? Daniel shouted, raising his weapon instinctively. Automatons, Karen replied, her voice tight with fear. Guardians, maybe. Designed to protect the core. Alan stepped in front of her, aiming his weapon at the nearest automaton. We don't have time for this. Fire only if you have to. The first automaton lunged, its movements surprisingly fast despite its awkward appearance. Alan fired, hitting it square in the chest. Sparks flew, and the creature stumbled backward, but didn't fall. Instead, it recovered quickly, its red eyes flaring brighter as it prepared to attack again. These things aren't going down easy, Alan growled, backing toward the core. Karen, figure out how to disable it. Daniel, cover us. Daniel nodded, firing short bursts at the automatons as they closed in. His shots did little more than slow them down, forcing him to retreat further into the chamber. Meanwhile, Karen worked frantically at the console, her fingers flying across unfamiliar controls. It's locked, she exclaimed, frustration evident in her voice. There's some kind of encryption. I can't bypass it. Try harder, Alan barked, narrowly dodging a swipe from one of the automatons. He returned fire, managing to sever one of its arms. But two more took its place almost immediately. Karen gritted her teeth, sweat dripping down her face despite the chill in the air. She pulled out her datapad, connecting it to the console in a desperate attempt to override the system. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as she typed furiously, searching for a vulnerability. They're surrounding us, Daniel yelled, his voice rising in panic. We can't hold them off much longer. Almost there, Karen replied, her hands shaking. Finally, a message flashed on her screen. Access granted. Got it. The core's pulsating slowed slightly, the hum dropping an octave as the energy flow began to destabilize. The automatons froze mid-motion, their glowing eyes flickering erratically before going dark. One by one, they collapsed to the ground, lifeless. For a brief moment, relief washed over the trio. But it didn't last long. The core let out a low groan, its glow intensifying until it was almost blinding. Cracks began to form along its surface, spreading outward like spider webs. Alarms blared deafeningly, drowning out all other sounds. It's destabilizing, Karen shouted, shielding her face from the intense light. If we don't get out of here now, it'll take the whole ship with it. Alan grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the exit. Move. Everyone back to the shuttle. They ran as fast as they could, retracing their steps through the twisting corridors. Behind them, the hum grew louder, shaking the very foundation of the ship. Sections of the walls crumbled, debris falling around them as the Sentinel began to collapse in on itself. This way, Daniel yelled, pointing ahead to where the shuttle waited. They sprinted the last few meters, leaping aboard just as the hull buckled violently behind them. Go, go, Alan ordered, strapping himself in as Karen powered up the engines. The shuttle launched just as a massive explosion rocked the Sentinel, sending shockwaves rippling outward. For a moment, it looked like the entire ship would implode, but instead, it stabilized, hovering silently once again. Back inside the Eclipse, Lieutenant Harris watched in awe as the shuttle docked safely. "Welcome back, sir," he said as Alan and his team disembarked. "What happened?" Alan shook his head, still catching his breath. We found the core, tried to shut it down, but it's too unstable. That ship's a ticking time bomb. Karen nodded grimly. And we're not just a ship. It's a fail-safe designed to destroy Earth if Project Erebus ever went wrong. If we don't stop it, it'll carry out its mission. Harris paled. Then what do we do? Alan clenched his jaw, determination burning in his eyes. We find a way to neutralize it for good. Because if we don't, humanity won't survive. As the crew scrambled to prepare for whatever came next, the Sentinel floated silently in the distance, its glowing sections dimmer now, but still watchful. It hadn't attacked yet, but everyone aboard the Eclipse knew it was only a matter of time.